All right. Well, on today's episode, we interviewed Adam Koos. We really talked about kind of the financial planning and really kind of getting sellers ready to exit their business. So, Casey, what was some of the big takeaways that you had from the episode?
It's all comes down, because Adam's background is psychology.
Yeah, which I thought was an interesting kind of take on a financial planner, right?
I know, but
there's a lot of duality between these two things.
But when you're meeting with somebody that's making the biggest decision of their life, you have to have some type of sensitivity to the other person that you're talking to, right?
Yep.
Someone's just not going to go, oh, yes, I'm going to sell you my business, right?
Yep.
There's a process and there's a lot of psychology that goes into it. And so what Adam does to meet with them and help them get ready is no different than what we do to try to buy their business.
Yep.
Same process, same conversation. We're just going at it at different angles. But ultimately, you've got to be a consultative salesperson.
Yep. You've
got to be consultative. You've got to educate. You got to bring something to the table. Is it taxes? Is it this or that? To keep that interest and drive that to the line. So I loved everything we talked about.
Yeah, and I would say that to add to that, the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting too was him trying to get in as early as possible before. Like, I think a lot of people take too long. It's a snap last minute decision, and he's saying, "Hey, no, you need to be planning this out for years before you actually sell, or and even if it does take maybe even a decade." You're at least ready because you set the foundation correctly. And I think a lot of sellers get into running their business, and they don't think about the exit. And I think that's where Adam and his firm really kind of help work with business owners to hey, get these things in place. And even if you don't use them for 10 years, you at least are ready to pull the trigger on a potential sale down the road. And I always thought that was interesting.
There's a lot in this episode.
So looking forward to it.
Hey there, this is Casey with the M&A Launchpad Podcast. I want to let you know about October 25th. Put it on your calendar. This is a do not miss one-day event. There's going to be incredible headliners, but really at the end of the day, you're going to get a chance to talk to people that have made acquisitions, learn from some of the challenges that they've made, because this is definitely a challenging process. But more importantly, there's going to be people there that can help you and support you along the way, from great vendors, quality of earnings, how to run the due diligence process, and how do I get financed? How do I raise capital? How do I structure all of these things? October 25th in Chicago, we're going to be gathering. It's going to be hundreds of people that are all focused, like-minded people. And man, everyone that's come has given us incredible feedback. So mark your calendar, October 25th in Chicago. We look forward to seeing you. All right, Adam. Hey, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so why don't you just dive in and talk to us a little bit about your background, what you do, and we'll start asking you a bunch of questions from there.
Sure, I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version because there's a lot. I started my plan was to become a trauma surgeon. I was in pre-med at Ohio State, and some personal things happened to me, and I decided, my senior year to drop out of the program. And my dad told me I ought to become a financial advisor. I thought he was crazy, but he thought I was good at making complex things easy to understand. And I was always messing around with this virtual stock exchange account. So he told me I could become a financial surgeon. That's what he said. So
nice.
That's how I got into the financial business, I guess. I ended up getting a double major in finance and psychology, but I always joke I use the psychology degree more than I do the finance degree, it seems. But and then from there, ended up in the exit planning world. We call it BTEP, or business transition and exit planning, value acceleration. Just after COVID, we always worked with business owners on the business advisory front, specifically with retirement plans, cash balance plans, pensions, things like that. But it wasn't until COVID that I read a book, frankly, and the statistics shocked me, and we can get into that later. And so I got into that, and then I started another company where I help financial advisors grow their firms, not necessarily to sell, but so that's kind of where I'm at today. That's the Cliff's Notes version.
So, all right. So it sounds like you've done a lot. You talk to a lot of business owners, right? I guess from your perspective, what's the most exciting part of what you're doing right now? Is it the kind of helping them plan for that next phase of their career, or is it the financial? You still liking the financial planning and advisory part of the business, or what does that kind of look like?
No, sure. My favorite part personally, and then again, you said right before we started recording, you said, is anything off limits? So I'm going to be honest. My favorite part of all of this stuff, it doesn't matter whether it's a non-business owner, a business owner, a financial advisor. I like the act of helping them learn the things they don't understand and bringing awareness first and foremost. So sitting down and doing the planning that doesn't really get me up in the morning. I always say that, what wakes me up every morning and gets me pumped up about going to work these days, doing this for 24 years is saving people from bad advice and bad advisors. Like, you can't save everybody, but that's what really jazzes me up. So I think that I think what I love the most about working with business owners is that the vast majority of them don't know how important it is to start planning to sell. And they just put it off and put it off and put it off, and they keep working harder and harder and harder. And then, unfortunately, the statistics say that most of them don't sell because they just don't plan in time. And it's really sad, and it's frustrating and shocking, really. So I think that's what really excites me the most, is just bringing that awareness out to the business owner community.
So this is kind of what got me into this space as well, is this baby boomer aging, and then a lot of businesses not being able to transition. And there was a jewelry store that did very, very well here in Houston. I think it was like K-Marks or whatever it was. They had a location up in the Woodlands where I'm at. And I was absolutely shocked to hear when they closed down. And it was like they had locations all over Houston.
Yep.
And I talked to somebody that knew them, and none of the kids wanted it. And the parents just were like, we don't even want to go through this process. And they just closed down. And you're like, so when
Talk about leaving some money on the table, right?
They made their money.
Well, no, but like my point is even like there's still value there, though, right? That's what's crazy.
It's a great brand and everything.
And you see that too, right? Like, well, maybe I'll just shut it down, and you're just like, why? Why would you do that? You're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, or they get sick, right? And they haven't planned, and that's probably. And tell me if that's what you've seen most of is, I'm getting to 65, I'm going to live forever. Right. Then I have a heart attack or something occurs, and I haven't put in a system, a process. I have no way to exit, and no one's ready to take over, and it's done.
Heart attack, stroke, dementia, divorce.
Yeah.
They have a partner and the partnership falls apart. The reasons are endless, honestly. And when we all think that it's just not going to happen to us.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's just human nature, right? We all think that we're going to live forever until something tragic happens, and then it's like a wake-up call, and you're like, oh, wait, I need to figure out like my affairs here, right?
Yeah.
What if that could happen to us? Or what if that could happen to me, right? But like, okay, so a lot of our listeners are either business owners potentially looking to exit or people looking to buy their first or second business, right? So like, what are some of obviously you're working with a ton of businesses. What are some of the like glaring mistakes that are just like so easy to fix ahead of time? Kind of maybe give us like your top 2 or 3, like business owners, please listen up. Like, this is the golden nuggets that Adam's going to drop right now. Like that type of stuff.
I think the overarching biggest thing is to pretend like you're a buyer. If you can do that, if you can step out of the box and you can look at your company as if you were going to buy it and make a T-chart and say, here's the reasons I would buy it, and here's the reasons I wouldn't buy it. Because I think that's probably the biggest mistake they make, is they're not able to step out of the box. I can't remember who said this. I think it was Chris Snyder. He talked about how, a business is like our baby, and nobody wants to be told your baby's ugly. Yep. But, oftentimes it's not ready. So I think the second thing I'd say is that too many times you've got this successful business, but it relies too much on the owner, and buyers are going to come in and be really nervous about buying a company where if the owner's gone, what happens to the customers? And with that, you get customer concentration problems where, what percentage of the revenue is the top 5, top 10, top 20, clients, customers, patients, whatever you want to call it. So that's another issue. De-risking from continuity standpoint, having contracts, bonuses, something in place for retention for key staff is another mistake I see a lot. We ended up not working with them, but we had one bank that was referred to us, and they not only were all paper, no technology, they thought their company was worth about 2.5 times what it really was. Nothing was electronic, like I said, all paper, and their CEO was leaving, and they wanted to sell next year. And it's like, well, you've got to get another CEO first before you sell, right? And I said, no, we're just going to sell. I'm like, you can't, like,
you're not going to get that multiple.
So, there's a lot, but it comes down to risk at the end of the day. A buyer doesn't want to buy something that has high risk. And, there's a lot of, no matter what, you can't get rid of the risk, right? You guys know that. But you want to minimize it, right?
So a couple of things that you're saying that I think our listeners will really dive into, and a lot of the process, right, that someone goes through in buying a business, you've got to first find the business, right? Then you've got to get that buyer and the seller and you an alignment to agree that you're the right person to transition and buy the business, right? So these guys got to go through a lot first just to even get to the closing table. Then they've got to get financing. They've got to go through all this stuff to get through that hump. And then they've got to take over and run the business. So it's very difficult. And anybody that's saying it's not is, they just don't know. It's very difficult.
They'll learn.
But in that meeting, one of the things I enjoy doing with the sellers, right, is I really like to spend a lot of time seeing if our core values are aligned, right? It is critical for me to be able to get a business and bring it across a line. If we're not seeing eye to eye, which we are not buying companies where the seller is going to leave the day we close. Just not going to happen. And so in my first conversations and in my meeting, it's hey, let's transition it. And so where you were talking about key man risk, right? A lot of these deals have a tremendous amount of key man risk. Mm-hmm. We just bought a business that had it was key man risk. Well, we know what we're doing. We knew we brought in the team. We did all those things. But he was never going to sell his business for the top dollar, and he knew it, right? So we ended up getting a great trade because he wanted the legacy to live on. So that's where I'm getting to is the legacy, right? I talk a lot about legacy in my conversations. What does the brand look like? We're not here to change your brand. We're not here to change this and change that. That's my talk track, right? So when you're talking to sellers, right, and you're helping guide them to these exits, what are the things that you're talking about with them? So us as that are coming to talk to them at a later date that you're preparing them for, what are those key things that we should know when we're talking to these guys? Sure.
Yeah, I think that since you started with the soft topics, things like that aren't necessarily tangible or quantifiable, would be asking them, what does an exit look like? First and foremost, like is there there's different ways to exit, right? You can sell to different types of people, companies, private equity, can be a competitive buyer. So we want to make sure they understand the different types of sales and different types of buyers so they can find a right match. Definitely want to find out how much what their relationships are like, not only with their customers, but their staff, with their team, because I think that one problem we might run into from time to time, if I'm just being totally transparent, is you run into an occasional owner that I don't want to say doesn't seem to care as much about their team, but they're looking at the numbers and that's it. And sometimes that can be tough for the buyer. I think that creates more risk, and it's intangible risk. It's not something, again, you can just put on paper and a number. So I think that making sure we understand who they want to sell to so that they can find a personality match, because any good business owner, again, it's their baby. Any good business owner is going to want somebody to come that's going to take care of their people, and their people are obviously their clients, their customers, and their team, their staff. The second thing I think would be just the numbers. I mean, I think too many times, and I'm sure you two have seen it, but I'm sometimes shocked when I see the books of some of these companies that it's amazing they're so successful, and the books
some of them are making millions of dollars too. They're just, it's being run on a spreadsheet, and there's no there's certainly no gap accounting going on anywhere.
Yeah, there's accounting entries that don't make sense, and then they're ready to get a valuation done and they haven't done any recasting, no add backs. And so that's a big, I want to call it a struggle, but one of the biggest humps we have to get over is the add backs, the recasting, and making sure that, look, if you own your office building, which many owners do, and you're paying a lease of, $500,000 a month, but the going rate's 300. We probably want to change that. If you have three cars in your company that you drive, your wife drives, and your sister drives, you probably want to recast that. So there's things like this, and then that's easier. It's the stuff like meals and
I'm not going to let them add back that stuff. No way. They are not going to get a multiple on that add back. I'm sorry. Right. I will fight that one. 1 car, understood. 3, no way.
Right. Yeah. So I'm exaggerating. Maybe not.
No, you're not, because I've seen it.
I think we've seen it. Actually.
You've seen it. Like these guys want to add back all this shit that they've been trying to avoid paying taxes on, and you're like, hey, look. You already got the bonus treatment. You didn't pay taxes on that.
Right.
You're not also going to get now a 3 times, 4 times multiple on that add back. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was curious just to kind of take a step back, to your earlier statement about kind of like a brain drain type scenario that a lot of people don't take into consideration, especially like the older gal or guy that just wants to get a bag of money and go off of the sunset. I think that's always kind of the fallacy, especially if you are kind of the sun, the stars, and the moon in this little universe of a business, right? How are you consulting or I guess giving people options, the business owners, that is, to try to divest themselves from that scenario, right? Are you saying, hey, you should bring on a GM, train that person ahead of time?
Yep.
Like, what are some of if you're a business owner listening to the podcast, like, what are some of those suggestions to avoid those scenarios, right?
When we put together a plan for an owner, it usually takes 6 months to do it. So there's a lot going on in there. I mean, part of that plan includes a personal financial plan for the owner and the spouse. If there's multiple owners, obviously there's multiple plans going on there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big problems that I think probably one of the biggest overlooked issues we run into with sellers, and this is the opposite of what you two mentioned earlier when you say that, they get these owners who want to just, they sell and they want to bounce like the next day. We do run into issues with owners that are like, oh man, what am I going to do now? Like this is, I call it
life
stay
around.
Yeah, it's like life after football, right? I played football my whole life. I'm done, average, NFL 3.8 years, something like that. Maybe it's less than that, but now what am I going to do for the rest of my life? So even if you're selling your company at 60 or 70, I mean, you still got life left and you've been, working in that company, your baby, for many, many, many hours a week. So you have to know what you're going to replace that time with when you're done.
That's a great point. That is a great point, because I even think in the sales process, right, for a buyer, there's a point where the seller stays on too long.
Yep.
So there is, I'm just saying,
we have example of that too.
but there is these are real things, and so while you're guiding them on, hey, what are you going to do next? Right. We going through the sales process, we're also needing to understand how long do we want this person on? Right.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. But aside from the personal planning for after, life after football, as I called it, the other part is the business side of it. And again, trying to get them out of the business. I try to very early on get them to understand that, look, you're going to have more fun. You're going to have more free time. You're going to be more profitable. The company's going to have less risk. Your staff's going to be happier, and your enterprise value is going to be higher if we do all these things to remove you, not completely remove you from the business, but because I think many owners like that the business depends on them. It gives them a sense of purpose. Yeah. But then I want to get a fractional CFO in there if they don't already have a CFO on staff, and then take that plan and hand it to that fractional CFO or their CFO. Maybe get a value advisor in. If there's already a CFO in place, I think we need a value advisor, somebody who understands the planning process, and then just kind of get them understanding that, look, this is your company, but again, kind of tying that into what's going to happen when they're done, when they exit and ride off into the sunset. There's got to be something to do. You can't just say, like this one owner, I'm gonna move to Colorado. We're building this house. My wife and I are building this dream house. So what are you gonna do in Colorado? Well, we're gonna hang out at the house. It's like, it's awesome. Have you seen the house? They want to show pictures. Like, yeah, okay, but what are you gonna do there though? And he gets mad at me. And it's like, look, I'm not trying to frustrate you, but you're gonna sit around the house all day. I mean, yeah. You got a nice pool, but I mean, how long can you sit around in a pool? And
especially Colorado, you ain't going to be using that pool at least, 8 or 9 months out of the year.
Touche. Yeah.
No. So, I mean, I guess so. What you're suggesting really is like, it's a 2-pronged process, right? It's how do we kind of get them comfortable with not being the sun, the moon, and the stars, right? First. And I guess the pitch to them is like, hey, the value is actually going to increase, right? Because you have set these pieces up in a way that's more scalable for the next guy or gal that's going to buy the company.
That's where that psychology major starts pulling in.
I know, right?
Now
I like
he's
this,
playing,
right?
He's playing that part.
No, because I love it, right? Because you really need to, and I think this is the one big thing too, right? To kind of take a point here. People need to be planning this out 1, 2, 3 years in advance, sometimes even longer, depending on what the scenario is. And I think that's the problem, is that people think that they could just flip a switch. Oh, I'm just going to go, now I'm ready. Well, no, you should have been planning this out for the last year or two, bringing these people in, getting the evaluations done, cleaning up your books,
review the financials.
Yeah, because I think the other thing that I noticed too, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you're reviewing these financials, is not only are they doing a lot of personal expense stuff, but they're just trying to load up so they don't have to pay taxes, right? Yeah. And really, what they're doing is they're shooting themselves in the foot.
They're not running it like a business. They're not running it like a business. They're running it like they're an employee of their business.
Yeah, they're trying to minimize their tax exposure, but what they're ended up doing is they're lowering the potential value of their company, right? By doing all of these things.
And
right?
more
So
important, from the perspective of a buyer, the buyer's not going to want it. I mean, they're going to be a less attractive company. I realize that, yes, the value goes up, but that's not the point. The point really is it doesn't matter what your company's worth if nobody wants it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think one of the things here for our listeners is if you do not understand the psychology of the person that you're buying their company, you've got to understand what they're going through on the other end, right? There's a tremendous amount of care and love in their business. And now you're talking to them, you're about to go through due diligence and tell them that their baby's ugly, right?
Yeah.
It's a big thing. So what do you do, Adam, to find these companies? How are you sourcing business owners? Because it's the same way that I'm probably trying to source them myself. So how are you getting to them? And then what is that consultative selling process to get to the table with them? Because I think it's the same exact thing we do.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to, how we meet anybody to begin with, I mentioned that in, COVID, I read this book and it said that 80% of businesses dissolve, and blew my mind. And then it also said that 80%, I'm a business owner, right? I'm sitting here reading that it says 80% of your net worth or the business owner's net worth is tied up in their company. And I'm shaking my head. I'm going, yeah, it sounds about right. And then you hear that 80% dissolves. So that means 80% of owners who have 80% of their net worth in their company lose 80% of net worth. And then of the 20% that sell, roughly 75% sell for less than market value, right? So, when I'm looking at this stuff, I get pumped up about meeting new people to share this information with them so they don't make the same mistakes and they don't become a statistic. So and during COVID, when I read this book, I decided I got to figure out how to find these people. And it's not easy. Like is there a harder person to get in contact with than a business owner? Right. So I am one. So what I did was I started another company that's Elevate and Exit. And I started doing events. At first it was in-person events, probably 10 of them throughout the year. Then we realized we could have a bigger reach if we just did them virtually, and then they could live out there forever. So we started a podcast, we do webinars, and we do some events, just a couple events locally now. And then I built revised my network of centers of influence. So, corporate attorney, M&A broker, a couple of them, business banker, and then, got them all involved in these events, did things like this, like a podcast, just like you're doing here. And the goal was really, it wasn't to sell, it was to, again, educate, bring awareness and let people know, hey, you can't just kick this can down the road. And then when we get to the table, which happens a lot, I'm not trying to sell, I'm just trying to educate. And because some of the owners aren't ready to sell. Literally, it's like, look, I'm not selling for 13 years. And my only goal then is to again, kind of like we were saying earlier, explain to them that, look, it doesn't matter if you're selling 3 years or 13 years from now. What matters is you do this planning now. And I don't mean to use CrossFit as an example, but one of the mottos of CrossFit is be ready for anything, anytime. I mean, if you're running a great company and all of a sudden you just you have some competitive buyer that comes up and says, hey, I want this thing, I want to buy this year. And then you're embarrassed to get the books out. That's your fault, and you're going to wish you
again, leaving money on the table. I think that's a big part of what's happening is just these people are just not prepared.
Right.
And I think you brought up a really, really good point that I want our listeners to understand. If you're a business owner, run your company like you're going to sell it at any point. Yes. I'll get around to that in 3 years or I'll get around to that in 5. Why not do it now? Because you never know if you're running a great business, especially right now, as we're starting to see a lot of buyers in the space, private equity is getting bigger and bigger. They're coming down the stack in terms of buying smaller companies. Yeah. So if you're a business owner listening to this podcast, the takeaway here is get your affairs in order now, because even if you say you're going to do it in 5 years, what if, like Adam said, what if somebody comes along and offers you a big old bag of money and you open up the books and they're like, well, actually we're going to rescind our offer because, it's not worth what we thought it was worth.
No, thank you. Right? Yeah.
You got a big egg on your face.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big takeaway.
So in your process, right? So you meet with these sellers, you've got this events, you've got these activities, you're doing these things. What I'm taking away is a little bit how I sell, and really it's consultative selling.
Yes.
Right. So I'm not here to buy your business, right? I'm here to learn about it. I'm here to see if there's a fit.
Is it right? Is it a good fit? That's exactly right.
And it's consultative selling. And so for those that are out there, if you haven't there's plenty of books on how to be a consultative selling, but it's having those things. So where I also like to focus on, and maybe you hit on this too, is the tax side. So I've always learned in my conversation, I've got a couple little like things that I say over and over again, but as I get deeper into the relationship, I start talking about taxes, right? That, are you familiar with what what you've depreciated over the last few years, right? There's a thing called accelerated depreciation. And usually these guys are like, what? And you're like, yeah, you're like, if I buy your assets, you're going to have to pay back your depreciation or a percentage of it. Have you done an analysis? Have you thought about it that way? And so then I get into this conversation of like, hey, why don't we, so it takes and I'm not doing this they really need to know, right?
Sure.
But on my side, there might be a way for us to structure it where they don't have as much tax burden, right? We just may not pay them as much. So on my side, I'm learning these key things, but I like the tax conversation in my consultative selling. That's kind of where I like to go. Do you guys get into the tax conversations with these guys? I mean, is that I imagine it's like a monster part of once they're like, hey, I want to sell, you're like, well then, hey, what is your tax going to look like?
Yep. No, we kind of act as the quarterback. We're obviously not CPAs here, but we get a CPA involved. We get the M&A broker involved. We get a TPA involved a lot of the time. So like as an example, we've got a company who technically it's two companies. He's spinning one off and selling them the two separately. And then he has real estate as well. And what we're doing originally, it was one of those situations where he says, well, if it's, and I'll just use the right like dates here. We'll say it's summer. He says, I want to sell at the end of next year. So let's just say I want to sell at the end of 2026. And I said, okay, well, have you filed your tax return yet? And he says, well, not yet. And I said, okay, why don't you wait to sell until January of 27? And what we can do as one tax reduction strategy is we can set up, well, first of all, we can max out the 401k for him and key staff. We can do profit sharing, max that out, reduce taxes today. We can set up a cash balance plan. And based on his age, he could put away somewhere in the ballpark of about $350 per year tax deductible per year. So he could do it for 24 in this case, because he hasn't filed his tax return yet. He could do it 25. He could do it for 26. And if we sell in Jan 27, we can do it again for 27. And his cap gains tax, if it's cap gains, aren't due until April of 28. So that's an example of one very common strategy that we use when we're on the other side of the fence. Obviously, I'm working with a lot of sellers. So we're kind of looking at the runway and saying, okay, how can we extend this runway out a little bit in a way that can help reduce not only our income tax now, but try to minimize or at least mitigate taxes that we're going to have to pay when this thing's all said and done. So that's an example. Anyway.
And it's probably shocking how many of these guys have never had this conversation before.
Nope. I was talking to an owner literally last week who owns a remodeling company. They do, I don't know what their average ticket is, but they do almost 300 remodels per year. That's a lot. And he's got him and a partner and a great team, very successful company. He's 55 years old. And he was talking about taxes, and he says, I was like, hey, so how's your retirement plan set up? I was like, I don't want to step on any toes, but how's your retirement plan set up? And he says, I have a simple IRA. I'm like, a simple? So he can only put away $17,000 per year. For all these years, he's been maxed out at deducting his income by 17 grand plus a 3% match. That's it. So there is great, smart, hardworking, successful people out there that are just getting maybe not the best advice in the world. And something I wanted to say earlier was that when we're talking about all this stuff, I think a big question that comes up, especially with buyers, but sellers as well, is, okay, this is all great, guys, but how do you do it? And the answer is hire people, hire help. Because, and I'm not talking about me necessarily, I'm saying, hire the corporate attorney for help, hire the, talk to a business broker, talk to someone like you guys, somebody who knows more than you do, because you can't sit around here and think that by going it alone, you're going to save all this money and that, you'll make more in the end. Because in reality, whatever you pay for all the professionals you hire to help you figure out how to get out of this cycle, this death cycle of being an employee for your company, minimizing your taxes, keeping your profits low, all that stuff, ending up with, amortization issues, with recapture issues. If you don't hire people, then I think you're going to end up with less at the end of the day. And honestly, the buyer is going to get a great deal.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's right. You always have to invest in these people around you, your team, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I don't think, I'd also say, I mean, it goes back to your earlier statement about just bringing in folks that can kind of potentially run parts of the company without you being involved.
100%.
Right? A lot of people are, I mean, we're all type A as an entrepreneur, like, oh, well, I'll just do it. And you end up doing 5 people's jobs, right? And then you're probably doing 5 people's jobs not all that well either.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, we've seen it on negotiations where, we had a seller and, I mean, he was trying to poor boy the thing and didn't have a lawyer at first. And we finally got to a point where like, we can't have any further conversations with you until you get a lawyer involved. Right.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't picking it up. Because I think what people realize is like, some of this stuff is like, and we'll come up, we know how to structure deals. We know a lot about finance and taxes and all the other things. A lot of these folks don't. And then they kind of get turned off because they think that you're trying to talk down to them, or they kind of get protective or defensive because they don't understand it.
Right.
And so I think that's where, like, again, as a seller or a potential seller down the road, not only getting your house in order, getting a team involved, but also just getting yourself educated on how the sale process works. Right? How could a potential sale work? Right. Because a lot of this stuff is just lost on people. They might be the smartest guy when it comes to running that company, and they've been very successful for decades, but they have just never sold a business before, and they just do not know how it works.
I don't know if you two are,
you have to talk to the experts.
I don't know if you two are Dan Sullivan fans at all, but
yeah,
I'm a big Dan Sullivan fan, and I live by the whole unique ability, where the only thing I should be doing in my business was what I'm uniquely born to do, what I'm best at. And then right along with that, his whole who, not how concept, you don't need to learn how to do something else. You need to hire more who's. Like get another who.
Yep.
Yeah. I worked at a private equity firm, and that's what Tom had always said to me. He was like, it's who, not how. And so we did the Sullivan stuff. It was really good. Yeah. I'm a quick start, by the way. That's my personality type. It's like full extreme quick start.
That's me too. That's me too.
And you're like, my wife's like, you're ready, fire, aim all the time. And I'm like, the other day I was like cranking the generator and stuff. And she's like, hey, you haven't turned it on. And I'm like, shut up. If I crank it, I'm just getting it ready. I'm priming it.
Yeah, that's funny.
Oh, that's great. So kind of as we're getting to wrap it up and all that good stuff, talk to us just real quick, for the people, our listeners, majority of them are in that process they probably haven't even met with their first seller yet, right? They're thinking about it. What is your, and I know we talked about consultative selling, we talked about these things, but from a psychologist kind of mentality, how would you advise them to get in contact when they're talking to them, and how to guide to at least to where they can get a really good, successful first meeting?
We're talking about the buy side?
Yeah, the buy side.
Yeah, the buy side.
I would say make a list of the companies you're interested in. If you don't know who those companies are, there's websites, there's people like you to help. There's business brokers. Make a list and put together a template email. Find their emails either on your own through their websites, or use an app like hunter.io. Apollo is another good one. Use LinkedIn to find them. So build the list out first, build your template out first, and just start banging out the emails and offer to buy them lunch. Everybody's got to eat, coffee is probably less likely, but buy them lunch, happy hour at the end of the day, and just come in with the intention of talking. That's it. It's kind of like, I'm not looking to, come in here like a bull in a china shop. I just want to learn about you, understand your business. And worst case scenario, I'm going to learn something, and you're going to get free lunch. You know what I mean? So I think coming from a passive kind of modest standpoint, where you're just trying to plant seeds out there, and different types of varieties of seeds, the more seeds you have out there, I think being cultivated and then touching base with those people over time, I think the higher probability you have of finding something really special. And then, business owners know other business owners. So they might know someone who's interested in selling that maybe they're not ready, but maybe they know somebody who is, and it would be a great time to make a connection. But the biggest thing I would say is there's so many people out there, business owners and people looking to buy businesses, that can analyze and overanalyze and reanalyze and plan and replan and redo the spreadsheet. But you can have the best list in the world of companies you're interested in, but if you don't go out there and like relentlessly execute, it's not gonna happen for you. So you got to do the work.
Yeah,
got to do the work, man. There's no way around it, right?
Yep.
And sending one email is not going to get you the answer, right?
But pretend like, don't treat it like it's sales. Treat it like you're going out to hang out. I think that the best deals are made by people who meet and become friends first.
Yeah, you got to like, know, and trust. I mean, that even happened. It doesn't matter where you end up in the buy side process or where you end up finding, potential sellers. It's all about making that connection, building that rapport. Because again, we talk about like, hey, this is their baby. They've been connected to this baby for maybe 30, 40 years in some cases, right? They want to make sure that baby's taken care of, post acquisition or post sale.
Yep.
Right. And so they're not going to just do that with somebody that they don't like.
No.
I mean, there's just there's been so many times when we've talked to potential sellers where money's really not even the top factor.
Yeah.
Tax planning in a lot of ways, they want to make sure that they're going to net the most money. Yep. But also, I think most of the time it's legacy, taking care of their team. What are the future plans for the company? Like, are you guys going to try to grow it? You're going to try to modernize it? You're going to do other acquisitions? That's what gets them excited. They want to see that you're going to grow their baby.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think some of the coolest deals don't end with a handshake at the table. It ends with a hug. I mean, that's pretty cool.
I love that.
I like that. And I am a hugger. So be careful.
Ready.
All right. So
ready, hug, aim. Yeah.
Whatever it takes, honestly. If you don't like hugging, we'll just dat, whatever, Awesome. Well, Adam, it has been incredible to hang out with you today and learn more. We're going to jump right now into our rocket round. And this is where we ask our guests 3 of what I think some of the most important questions.
I think I'm ready. Go ahead.
All right. Well, here you go. So first question is, what do you like to do in your free time?
All right. In my free time, my wife taught me how to play volleyball, and we've been playing sand volleyball every Thursday night for 18 years.
Wow.
So
okay.
Good for y'all.
I like it.
Year round, even indoor. So it's not my chosen sport, but it's a good time. It's good exercise for a 46-year-old, and
good bonding.
It's a good time.
Good
bonding. I like it. All right. Next question, man. Most memorable moment in your business journey?
Most memorable moment. It was we've won a lot of awards, and I don't really take myself very seriously. My wife always gets mad at me that I don't really think too much of all the recognition we've received over the years, because I don't know why it doesn't. I know it's important, but at the same time, it's not. There's other things that matter more than me in life. But when we won the Better Business Bureau Torch Award for Ethics, I would say that was probably one of many, but one of the top, off the top of my head, one of the top moments, because being in the financial industry and knowing everybody who's listening and listening to or watching this knows that ethics don't usually go with finance very well. And we're still the only, in Central Ohio anyway, the only financial advisory and exit planning firm to ever win that award, which is pretty cool. So that's exciting.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Huge.
Thank you.
It's huge.
All right. And last question here is, what is your favorite tool or resource?
Oh man, I wanted to be unique here, but ChatGPT, man. ChatGPT, Claude, they're my best. I mean, I don't even use Google anymore. Everything is ChatGPT. It's the
buzz. I've been to a lot of events the last couple of months. I think everybody's using it for one way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So no, you're not the first guest to say ChatGPT,
yeah,
but
I'm sorry.
I think people. It's all about the prompts, right? You got to have the right prompts.
Right.
Hey, and I just got my plod, so I've got to set it up. But I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
No more note taking.
That's right. Right.
That is awesome, man. Well, Adam, how can people get a hold of you?
If you look up just my name, Adam, last name spelled Koos, so Koos, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find our podcast. We also have podcasts that we run. Maybe we ought to have you guys on, actually.
Love to.
Do a home and home. But those are probably the best ways. You can find the website for our exit planning company is elevateandexit.com, and then libertaswealth.com for the financial advisory firm.
Awesome. And we'll put those in the show notes as well so people can reach out to you and get some more information.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Well, thanks again. No, a lot of great, valuable information today. We wanted to thank you for being on the show, and
thank you for honoring me with allowing me to be on the show. You guys are doing some really, really impressive stuff. The conferences, I'm going to definitely try and make it to the conference next year. This one in Chicago coming up looks awesome. I'm just not able to go because I'm speaking at another conference in Philadelphia, but what you're doing is really impressive. I think it's really cool. And, I'm looking forward to seeing you two succeed.
Cool, brother. We appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.